consume you. You consume at the party, but don't let the party consume you. This is something that I thought about. And, it's so true. It's so true. As when you're on the road, you're playing local gigs, or you're a musician, and your job is to entertain people. And like, look, I've got an Iggy Pop shirt on. Now, what is a guy that likes fusion and yacht rock? Why do I have an Iggy Pop shirt? Well, it's very simple, man. Iggy Pop is very entertaining. He's an entertainer. He is not a great singer. He is not a great songwriter. But there's something about this crazy, send out the gimp, and Iggy comes out and comes out and just, and puts on a show. He puts on a crazy, a maniacal show. And there is a awesome series where Henry Rollins talks about, Iggy Pop, and how Henry Rollins was playing some gigs with Iggy Pop. And he said, man, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to outperform Iggy Pop. I'm going to get all pumped up, and I'm going to put on this incredible show and all that. And he would do his show, and Iggy would walk by like, yeah, okay. And Iggy would proceed to go out there and top everything that Henry Rollins had did. And he might be 10, 20 years older than Henry Rollins, and Iggy Pop would go on, and he'd come out first thing out of the show, and there were these flower pots on the stage, and he'd come out and just kick them and bust them wide open, and just be bleeding on stage, and just living for his art. And as performers, that's what we do. We live to perform. But at some point, that after party, that after show festivities, at some point, that can take over precedent over the actual performance. And you can look forward to the after party more than the show. Now, eventually I'm going to do an episode where I talk about my favorite venues to perform, and, where I like to play out on the road and all that. But I've talked about in the past the differences between playing arenas, stadiums, and clubs and theaters, and all the different types of gigs that you play. And the reality is arenas, stadiums, huge gigs can really be kind of lonely. You could play for, 20,000 people, and you go back to that cold dressing room, and you're separate from everybody that you just played for in the audience. And you go back to your existence of your 12 or 13 guys that you travel with, and that cold backstage, and everybody that's, maybe you're sick of each other. And that's something that very much can happen. You're thrown together on the road. If you're in a band of guys that grew up together, or at least, started together as a band and worked together as a band to climb through the ranks, well, then there's a certain brotherhood. But when you're a side man, you're often thrown into situations with people that you might not have any thing in common. You might have different opinions on things. You might have different opinions on music. I'd find myself, sitting on a bus with people that just had no respect for any of the music that I liked or listened to. And they would like, things like Rascal Flatts. They would think Rascal Flatts is just the, greatest group on earth. It's like, well, dude, I get the appeal of a band like Rascal Flatts. I get that they sell tons of records, but I am not somebody that would consume that. I am not their target audience. And while they would write radio-friendly sippy cup country, that is not something that appeals to me. I am not a soccer mom. So personally, I don't hold a ton of value for the band Rascal Flatts. They're a great band. They had lots of hits, talented guys, but I am not the target audience. But for you to negate the music that I like and talk about Rascal Flatts as the deity of all music, dude, it's laughable. It's laughable. But so you're on a bus with people that you have nothing in common with, and they might have very strong opinions and don't, not as much experience as you. And it really, they're green. And green is all get out. And you might be in there with people that, just don't have the experience that you have. And yet they don't treat you with any respect. And you may be in situations where you just don't like the people that you're on the road with. And that can happen. And it's not saying you disliked everybody, but there could be 2 or 3 people that make it difficult. Maybe they're treated with favoritism, and maybe you're not, or maybe you are and they're not. And, different situations can arise on the road. And sometimes that after party can become the highlight of the day. And, part of the reason for that is, to interact with some different people than the people that you're having to travel with, every day, day in, day out, 5 days a week, traveling in a bus with 13 people. Imagine that. And it's not an easy lifestyle. Getting a chance to maybe go out in the crowd, meet some people that you met the last time you went through town, have a couple beers with them, hang out, party, whatever. Sometimes, and more often than not, after a while, that becomes the highlight of the whole day. Yeah, the show was great. Yeah, the show was fun, and you're pumped up and you're hyped up from playing your show. But getting to hang with normal people, and when I say this, I've always known that if all you hang out with is musicians, you're not going to be firmly grounded in what regular, everyday people like. And I've always, kind of preferred in a way to not hang out with musicians too much. When I went to my first year of college and I went to a conservatory, hanging out with the musicians, I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on. There's a lot of focusing on things that ultimately don't matter to, the everyday Joe. And the same thing can be said, when I went to Berklee College of Music. Man, there's a lot of crazy and a lot of weird musicians. That's just a fact. And the same thing went when I went to GIT. Whole different type of musician in some ways. Some different ones. You had the musos, the European jazzers. You had the metalheads, and they were from all over the world. And, they're just, everybody has their own weird idiosyncrasies. And, but it's not, when you get away from that, like I very much went to high school, in a regular high school, and I was one of a handful of musicians, in the school, or at least rock musicians. And most of the people that I hung out with didn't play an instrument and didn't, they thought it was cool that I did, but, I was just a kid that lived down the street. And, when you get too focused on hanging out with musicians, you don't get a sense of reality. But man, I found it, later in my touring career that, I couldn't wait to get to the after party. I couldn't get my gear capped and my guitars put away fast enough to get to the after party where I could get to hang with some people, with some friends, some fans, whatever, anybody. There were nights where, man, it just, I'd get on the bus after the show and the vibe would just be off. And everybody's just sitting there staring at their phones. And I'm like, man, screw this, man. Screw this. I'm going to go inside the club and just sit down at the bar and just be as inconspicuous as possible. But ultimately, man, I'm still wearing the clothes that I had on when I was on stage. And people, after a while start, oh, hey, man, good show, whatever. And man, just getting to hang out with somebody different and sit there and have a beer, and or a shot and hang out and meet people. And man, that is the highlight. That became the highlight. But on top of that, the party, the consumption began to consume me. I began to need drinks before the show and party before the show. And then pretty soon, during the show, I'm partying and I'm getting drinks. And then after the show, I'm having more drinks. And, I would continue to drink until the last minute the bus is about to roll out. And then sometimes we'd get on the bus, then everybody and maybe some more people I tended to like hanging out with the crew guys sometimes better than the band because they're just, they're everyday Joes, they're regular guys, man. And they would come on the bus and then I'd get on the bus and then sometimes then the beers are getting handed out while you're on the bus rolling down the road. And thankfully, a lot of times there would be after show pizza up there. So when you're finished with the, 15th beer or whatever it is you're having, a slice of pizza heated up in the microwave might be the only thing saving you from a brutal hangover the next day. But man, you consume the party, but don't let the party consume you. I don't know if I could have gone back out on the road and not drink. That's the reality. I tried it. I tried for a long time. I tried not drinking on the road, but the reality is, man, it was hard to get to sleep. Then everybody else is drinking. You're hearing them partying, and it's just okay. Give me a beer, So there would be times where I'd try and I'd try and I'd try, and then I'd hear everybody partying and I couldn't sleep, and I'm just like, all right. And I walk out to the lounge and here's a beer, The reality is, man, the party began to consume me. I initially tried to consume the party, and eventually the party consumed me. And it became the highlight of the day. And the most important part of the day is getting that show over with and getting to the after party. Where are the girls? Where are the beers? Where are the shots? Where's the cool guys to hang out with at the bar? And, that became the highlight when in all reality, ultimately, the show should have been the highlight of the day. The show should have been the priority of the day. And yeah, I took it serious. And yeah, I gave 110%. But I also gave 110% to the party. And that's never a good thing.